This is one of my favorite SAT questions of all time. I just think it's a very funny question. So it's a vocab question, obviously. We need to think about the words. And when we have these, most of the time, our strategy is to trust your instincts. What would you say in this situation? And it's tricky because all the words kind of mean the same thing, right? Tight, firm, stiff, taut, these all kind of mean tight, right? If you looked at the word tight in a thesaurus, these would all be synonyms. They'd all kind of be there. However, we cannot use them interchangeably, especially because things can be tight in different ways, okay? The weirdest word, I think, for most people is D, the word taut. We don't use that very often, but it does mean tight. It just refers specifically to something like a rope or something loose that you hold taut. You pull it tight, right? So a rope that kind of droops, you pull it taut, and it's going to be, straight. And so it's tight, but it would be weird to talk about a fruit, an apple, being taut, because you can't pull an apple like that. That doesn't make any sense. So it's the right definition, but the wrong usage. We can't describe an apple this way. As for the rest of it, I keep using the word tight, but it's kind of funny to just describe an apple as tight. It sounds a little slangy, almost like, I don't know if people still use this word this way, but people used to use the word tight to mean good or awesome. And so that apple's tight, that kind of sounds like we're changing the meaning a little bit. So that's not right either. And the reason people get this wrong is, I guess, you just don't have strong instincts about how to describe fruit. Why would you? If you're not going to the grocery store and going to the produce section and picking up fruits and trying to figure out which ones to use, you're not really experiencing the words in this way, right? An apple should be firm. It shouldn't be mushy. An apple should be firm. It's tight in a sense, right? The skin is tight. The flesh of the apple is hard, so that way it's not rotted. And so to me, this just seems obvious. An apple should be firm. That's just what we say. But when this question forces me to think about it and think about, well, why do we say that? What about that word firm is better than saying that the apple is stiff, right? Because stiff also means hard in a sense, right? So I don't really have an answer to that. It is just the word we use, and to describe an apple as stiff, suddenly that's a bad thing, right? If someone said, here, taste this apple, it's great, it's so stiff, I would think that's a bad thing about the apple. I don't know why. It kind of means the same thing as firm, but it's just different. And so this really, to me, it's a funny situation because I can picture myself being handed these apples and them being described in these different ways and just being confused and disgusted by it, and yet it's just a word. And the definition is the same, but somehow something changes. And that really cuts to the core of what these writing vocab questions are about. The definitions will be very similar, but the usage is very specific. And why does the English language have these kinds of situations? Well, it's just the way we use it. And so these are the things that really are difficult for people for whom English is not your first language. And I see this all the time. I work with students all over the world who have, whose second language is English, and they're great at it. They speak it perfectly, but you just don't have any exposure to these kinds of specific situations. When you do the everyday things like shop for fruit, you're not speaking in English, you're speaking in your native language. And so these situations don't come up for you. And the best you can do is still just trust your instincts. You might not have a solid reason, but hopefully, you've experienced it somehow. You've watched a movie or a television show or something where someone has just offhandedly said something like this and it stuck with you. That's the best we can do in these situations. You're not going to be able to study this and memorize it. It doesn't work like that. So if you are struggling with these kinds of questions, just keep watching TV in English. You'll get more information that way, and hopefully you won't have too many of these on your exam. This is not something you can predict. Just do the best you can and use your time and energy on the stuff that involves grammar and ideas, the things that are provable with rules and definitions, and you'll still do great. This is not a high priority for you.